People run for three reasons. Either you need to get somewhere, you gotta get away from something, or sometimes both. I don't think I can come up with a good answer to this question, but what I'd like to do instead today is tell you the story about one of my favorite runners, Sohn Kee-Chung. Sohn Kee-Chung might be one of the most interesting marathon runners that no one outside of Korea has ever heard of. Sohn is the first Korean to ever win an Olympic medal. He broke records, he ran super fast, and he did it in a way that you might not expect. So, let's begin. Sohn Kee-Chung was born in 1912 in Sunwon, modern-day North Korea. His family was very poor. When Sohn was just a child, he would watch the other kids ice skating along the nearby river, but his parents could not afford ice skates for him to play along. At this time, Sohn and his family were struggling. Their homeland was also in a tough spot. See, Korea has a long history of being conquered by other nations. It's a small state surrounded by much larger and stronger countries, making it prone to attacks. From 1910 to 1945, Japan colonized Korea. So, Sohn was not allowed to learn his Korean history or language at school. He learned Korean at home, but he was forced to use Japanese outside of the house. At this time, Korean people were even forced to abandon their own Korean names and only use their given Japanese names in public. It was during these years when Sohn started to run. But Sohn didn't run for fun. Sohn Kee-Chung needed to run. Sohn Kee-Chung had to run to and from elementary school every day. His parents couldn't afford a bike like the other kids, so he could bike to and from school. When Sohn ran next to these bikes, he tried to run as fast as he possibly could so that he could speed next to them. He ran along the railroad tracks and by the riverbanks every single day by his home. Sohn won his first 5K race in Sunwon around this time, beating many adult amateur runners. But before that, Sohn quit out of school. He made it to the 5th grade before dropping out of elementary school. He had to in order to support his family. During the day, he worked for a printing office as an errand boy, and at night, he sold fruit and nuts. He knitted gloves and socks in his spare time, not as a hobby, but so that he could sell them and make more money for his family. It was at this point when Sohn continued to run. He needed to run so he could work more during the day. So, as Sohn Kee-Chung grew older, he wanted a better life. He moved to Japan despite his parents' disapproval. He continued working during the day, running food deliveries at a Japanese restaurant. He practiced his running technique overnight, but it wasn't the life that Sohn hoped for. In Japan, Sohn Kee-Chung was discriminated against for his race and treated like a low-class servant. Sohn moved back to Korea in shame, but when he moved back, he kept running. Sohn started working in a grain store during the day, and he kept training overnight. Sohn was still very poor, but he kept running. He could not afford to buy running shoes, so he wore dabi. These dabi were made of cloth and looked like closed-toe sandals. Despite the lack of resources, Sohn kept training until he won 2nd place at a major 5K race in Seoul. That was enough to establish him as a runner. Because of that medal, Sohn was allowed to go back to school. So, when he turned 20 years old, Sohn Kee-Chung went back to Yeanmi High School. He kept running at Yeanmi, which had an excellent track program. Sohn ran everything from 400 meters to 15 kilometers and started running up to 15-mile races. So, 1 year later, he ran his first marathon. During the Seoul Marathon in 1933, the age of 21, Sohn set a time of 2:29:34. Not bad. This was the new unofficial marathon world record. The course was about 26 miles and 385 yards long, just half a yard short of the official qualifying standard at the time. So, Sohn Kee-Chung, now the unofficial fastest marathon runner in the world, kept running. He won several other gold medals over the next 2 years, and in 1935, he broke the official world record in Tokyo, lowering the time by over 4 minutes. Next, Sohn was set to compete in the Berlin Olympic Games. So, now the official fastest marathon runner in the world, Sohn won the Berlin Olympics in 1936. He set a new Olympic marathon world record time of 2:29:19, breaking the 2:30 barrier, and he still wore the dabi. Sohn Kee-Chung became a hero in both Japan and Korea. To the Japanese people, Kee-Tae-sun earned a new gold medal, and in Korea, Sohn Kee-Chung symbolized a spirit of rebellion and pride in Korean heritage. He won 2 prizes for winning the Berlin Marathon: the gold medal, as one might expect, and a Corinthian helmet from the 8th century BC. Due to regulations, the helmet was kept in a museum in Berlin for over 50 years. Sohn was given the helmet in 1986. When he won the Olympic gold medal at the 1936 Games in Berlin, Sohn bowed his head as the Japanese flag rose. His refusal to look up at the flag stood for defiance against the colonial rule. That was the last time Sohn Kee-Chung would ever run a marathon. Sohn was allowed to attend law school at Meiji University under the condition that he would stop competing. Japanese officials forced Sohn Kee-Chung to retire to prevent any future political demonstrations in support of Korean independence. Sohn married his first wife in 1939 and graduated university in 1940. He started working for a bank for the next few years until his wife passed away in 1944. Shortly after his wife's death, Sohn Kee-Chung quit his job as a banker and started coaching runners. He decided to follow his old passion in honor of his wife, and he poured all of his effort into making the best marathon runners in the world. Korea gained independence in 1945. Sohn quickly gained notoriety as a top coach. His athletes won top competitions during the 1940s and 50s. His world record lasted for 12 years, but his protege, Seo Yeon-bok, earned the record, winning the Boston Marathon. Sohn Kee-Chung became the director of the South Korean Boston Marathon team, the president of the KAAF, and the member of many Olympic planning teams. He carried his flags in the 1948 and 1952 Olympic Games. He carried the torch at the 1988 Seoul Olympics, and at the age of 76, he no longer had to run for a nation that was not his own. When he died in 2002, Sohn Kee-Chung earned 2 awards. 1 for his athleticism, and 2 for his contributions to Korean society. The South Korean government paid tribute to Sohn by building the Sohn Kee-Chung Memorial Park. So I'll ask you again, why do you think people run? People are always running away from something, and they're running towards something new. People bother to run because they have to do it. For Sohn Kee-Chung, he ran because it was all he had. He ran from poverty, he ran from oppression, and towards freedom. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.